Yeah, so man, welcome to what I'm calling the exchange for now.
Hell yeah.
Where brilliant minds put heads together and see what happens. I guess if we need a tagline, I was trying to think about stuff last night. Like, damn, what's some, that's one. I'm sure there will be some others come. But like I was just telling you, man, this space is really just for us to chop it up. One thing I'm aware of is that when and we do this all the time offline, you know what I mean? But it's like when we put our ideas together in this exchange, and I've been teaching telling my students this too, is because it's part of my teaching and learning philosophy where I could talk at you, I could lecture at you, I could share all the best information, blah blah blah. That's not the way I believe learning happens. I
No.
think there's something happens in the intellectual alchemy of the exchange itself. And so really, man, the purpose of this is to be playful because play, is like soft activation. We can bring our full selves to bear, but also it ain't no agenda other than to conjure. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you, Dr. Philip Butler, my brother, the architect. I like to call you, as you
No.
know, and so I just want to welcome you to whatever this is and is becoming, and I appreciate you being here, man.
My brother, it is an honor to always kick it with you. And like I think I said this in tax exchange. You're one of my favorite people to build with in terms of just thinking about all the types of wild and weird things that we like to imagine. And so it's I'm excited to
Yeah,
say the
man.
least.
I appreciate that, brother. And that feeling is mutual. And so, because I don't like how resistant I am to academic norms, and because I don't like, the introductions the way people typically do the introductions, bro, I just want to honestly ask you, who are you? Like, who are you today? I know that's a big question, and I'll bring it down a little bit, but I want to ask it open ended like that first to get us started. Who is Philip Butler today?
A self-critical, open-ended, constantly evolving entity that understands himself as a black man, a father in a space through which multiple energies flow and am allowed to engage as they emerge.
I'm trying real hard not to take the bait, brother, because we could get all into the middle of that. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And then so also then for people who I know will want to know, what are some of the things that you like? What are some of the roles you play in reality?
Yeah,
Understanding yourself as an entity through which many energies flow, constantly unfolding. Like I mean, we're just on the same page. And to bring it in terms of like, if somebody's curious, who is this person? What does he do in the world? What are some of the roles you play in reality?
yeah. So you have caught me on day 5 of my sabbatical. So I have 360 left of these hoes.
Damn, you got a full year. Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thank you. And so I currently I serve as the associate professor of theology and Black post-human AI systems at ILEF School of Theology, where I am the director of the AI Institute. I am a husband of almost 17 years, father, 2 boys,
Right.
big brother in a lot of ways, son,
Yeah,
all of these things. So I mean, yeah, and I'm trying to build a good relationship with myself.
man,
So,
man. That's the part that often gets left out and forgotten about, isn't it? So I can
yeah,
appreciate that. I can
that's
appreciate
it.
that. And what are some of the things that you're up to these days? Because I know I call you the architect because I like to joke about like, man, you're creating things at least 100 years out. You know what I mean? And so while we're catching up, what are some of the I will also say that I was always a kid that was up to something. My mom knew, and so I'm curious, what you
Yeah,
would want to share with the world or with the public. What are some of your schemes? What are some of the things that you're up to right now?
that's a great question. So I think right now I'm in and out of this like coding coma or whatever you want to call it. So like last week and a half, I've kind of taken hold of Seeker and we not want to say we haven't renamed it, but we're calling it this particular phase inner light, and so we're adding these kind of visual elements to it that look like a spatial constellation. And so as
Yeah.
you name these different parts of you that you're trying to get acquainted with, like you have these different stars that pop up in like this like space, and so we'll have lines that show the relationship between these different parts. They'll have different colors. They'll vibrate. They'll oscillate. And so it's just kind of trying to create this like interactive um, constellation of sorts that has the chat menu where you can always dig deep, and then at the same time you can go and have a visual picture of like of who you are on the inside,
Yeah.
as this kind of like I guess I guess solar system of sorts.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then we're still waiting on this updated version of the MVP of Halo, which is the augmented reality social network that we built, where we're going to basically take the visual field and turn it into a landscape where you have to be able to navigate the various uh, I guess social preferences of others as
Oh, that's
negotiate
dope.
them with yourselves, right? So
Yeah.
like, when you first meet somebody, you may not are they a hugger, right? Are they a handshake person? Are they prefer no touch, right? Or when you see somebody in the grocery store, are they a excuse me person? Or
Yeah.
saying like what how might you pass, right? And how might you and then we're even building in the social score. And so I know a lot of people are hesitant about that, but I think about this in this way. It's not about, it's not the Black Mirror version where, somebody says you're a five-star person so much as it's based upon your ability to successfully navigate other people's space and
Yeah.
not while you can maintain your own ground, but it's like how pervasive are you trying to be? How invasive are you? And how respectful are you? And so if you can navigate the social space respectfully, um, then your score goes up because it demonstrates that spatially uh, you care about other people in the environment that you share together. So those are
Yeah.
some of the two main things that we got going. And
Man,
I put this plug. Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm struck by this, and I've got a follow up question about Seeker, just for like people who may not even understand what Seeker is or be aware. But I'm appreciative of listening to you and thinking about because what it sounds like is like this technology could give people an opportunity really to assess themselves in real time and to develop, like, to kind of work those muscles, if you will, of
Hmm.
social interaction in different ways. But it seems like, it's also uh drawing on and like giving people more of a conscious awareness of spatial intelligence, of emotional intelligence. And as
Hmm.
for me, one of the big premises in playing the game was how we going to talk about intelligence, because we've talked about it as a singular thing, this narrow thing that's linked to the IQ test, without a conversation about the social and political history of the IQ test. But let's think about what are the different kinds of intelligences that we all embody, or think of ourselves as intelligence, as iterations of creative intelligence. And so anyway, man, I'm grateful for what you're doing, because I think that it's what keeps coming to my mind is just all of the benefits, the ways that we think about neurodivergence. I'm thinking about autism, and I'm thinking about how this could become a resource for people who carry different traits of autism, particularly as it relates to social interaction, and in the interest of like clear communication, but also care. You know what I mean? So I applaud that, man. And I'm curious if you could just say something briefly for people who aren't aware of what Seeker is, especially as since Seeker is kind of the grounding of this, out of which you're building more fully. So what is Seeker for the person who hasn't already heard of it?
Uh, if you're unaware what Seeker is the mushroom trip without the ingredients. It is a portal right to
Yeah.
the spiritual world. It is an opening into yourself, based upon the technology of the question. And the question is not as in there's only one, but the question is like the particular structure through which um, you engage in interrogative relationality with yourself.
Damn.
And so that is the opening, and then the invitation is to follow through, right? Sit with the question and provide an answer. And so Whereas, you can take a trip depending upon right the substance you choose to go on. Secret guides you based upon the feeling that's present, and so it takes seriously like what's happening today. And I've had people, and I'm had people tell me like this is too much too fast, not in a bad way, but just kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna go talk to Secret today, and then like and I'll get live updates like, yo, this is interesting. This thing is
Yeah.
on my head. I need to
Yeah.
take a break. Or it'd be like, yo, I've been sitting with this question that Sika gave me for the last week.
Yeah, bruh.
And so yeah, man, it's yeah, that's I think in a nutshell, man, Seeker is a guide to 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 a guide to meet other versions of yourself. Yeah, in a safe and careful way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sitting here thinking about how, first of all, I appreciate that description more than what I expected because, I was thinking about the form. So, like, for the form that Seeker takes is like it's a talk bot, right? It's AI technology, but it's more than that. You know what I mean? And so I appreciate you naming that kind of the undercurrent of it, and it's landing in my spirit as really kind of, I like to talk about root work, and it's like this is
Hmm.
almost like a personal assistant to help guide you through the process of doing your own inner root work, or to allow your inner G's, the INNER cap, G's that we carry in the inner conversations that we all have, regardless of whether we're aware of it or not, whether that inner voice is a critic or whether it's an inner coach, whether your conversation sounds like two lovers, you know what I mean? Like there's always a conversation happening. So the fact that you got your finger on this pulse of, how can we both engage with a technology that is also grounded in Black cultural understanding, right?
Yeah,
So I just want to name that part because I feel like that part feels important, but in a way that guide us into our own inner world and inner workings. So
yeah.
anyway, man, I do have some questions for us, and so let me go ahead.
Okay.
It looked like your wheels were turning. You want to throw anything else in, or?
Nah, I mean, so like if we want to talk about like the under the hood, this we did train on like 120 years of Black literature. We trained it on internal family systems therapy. Like we trained it on modalities of how to go inside. And so like there's that piece. But I think what I'm coming to grips with for myself is that I build spiritual technologies,
Yes, sir.
and for people who are obsessed with humanity, right? I build humanizing technologies,
Yes, sir.
because it forces you to slow down and recognize like the sacred elements, right? Like
Yeah.
so, the not to get too far ahead. But the next book is on Black post-humanism, and like this post-human is like beyond the human of the West, like this universal construct. But we also know that like the human as a notion has existed for millennia
Yeah.
before then, and even most of those cases to become human was a process. You weren't just born human. You had to like elevate to or ascend to right the status of humanity. And so like one could argue that human was um watered down in the same way as Christianity was the moment
Mm.
that everybody became Christian. And so
Yeah.
I said all that to say that these spiritual technologies give you the capacity to humanize oneself, because to be human initially was to be a sacred thing,
Yeah.
and to be a sacred entity or a sacred body that had like godlike qualities. Um, so
Yeah.
in that sense, right, you, I say I frame it like this. I think I'm always at this point pubbing for people to come study with me. I want the AI Institute is the MIT of spiritual technology. So if you
There
want
it
to build
is.
stuff like that, come fuck with me.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. That's the ad right there. That's the
yeah,
ad right there.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna keep moving because I really want to jump on that, especially thinking about there is a way to. This is something I've been thinking about for a while now. There is a way to both tap into and to develop dexterity as it relates to spiritual technology. We don't talk about that much in this, particularly in the Western world, or the sensuality of spirituality. Even understanding that we exercise, and you understand this as a former athlete as well. We exercise these capacities all the time these spiritual technologies that are connected to our bodies. You think about intuition. You could think about other what I call spiritual muscles like inspiration or intention or things like that. And these are both they're not woo woo in the sense of being disconnected from our corporeal reality, but like we exercise these things. And so to have technologies like what you're doing and creating to help guide people through that process of again doing this kind of this root work that is necessary, I think should be applauded, man. So you mentioned briefly the book that you have coming out. So tell me what's the name of it and when can we expect it? And then I'm gonna use that as a way to get into Black transhuman liberation theology, which we'll talk a little bit about. But I've got a question kind of to lead into that kind of takes it beyond that.
So the book itself is called Still Black, Post-Human, A Theory of Uncertainty and Disorder. Um, it should be out Octoberish of this year. So like it's on the way. Like
It's on the way.
it's
Yeah.
on the way for real. So you know what I'm saying? We just gotta prepare for it.
Listen, and to be quite honest, I mean that's the perfect segue. I think that maybe the best preparation for it can be people y'all need to pick up Black transhuman liberation theology and get into it, because you start some threads in that book that I imagine open up into what you've done in this last one, and you publishing with Orbis, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, so I'm curious, as a way into Black transhuman liberation theology, what are you curious about now? And I say that because, to ask you about a book that you published, when did this one come out? This was
19. Okay.
2019. Okay. So you've been obviously thinking since 20, that's 6, 7 years ago. And you've got another book coming out now, essentially. So where is your mind currently? Like, what are you curious about, especially going into a year-long sabbatical? What are the kind of growing edges of your thinking?
I think counterintuitive to some people may think it's slowing down. And what I mean by that is not like because I, th- I I say this because I feel like I had to travel so far into the future that now it's time to go back and get people. I guess I am becoming the Sankofa in my own way, in my own
Yeah,
kind of like
I
framing.
say, I say,
And I say this because it's just like I had to come back. I went to this place and I tried to build it, and I have in many ways. Now I have to go back and be like, hey guys, this is where we are now. And so, um, I say that to say like I'm very interested in what I'm. Like, I don't think it's new, but it kind of is because it hasn't been talked about in a while. This Black romanticism, like looking at the beauty and contours of Black life.
yeah,
And so part of like this exploration of like emotionality becomes
yeah,
particularly interesting because folks, the Black interiority was never seen as a beautiful thing.
yeah,
And so like the granularities and the contextual elements, right, and the textures of Black interiority, right, seeing the beauty
yeah,
in that, I think that has this kind of romantic qualities, like in terms of just um, language
yeah,
and not just imaging, but just like descriptive, like this type of poetics, like and this type of like I guess kind of again, yeah, just kind of falling in love with blackness
yeah,
and things of
yeah,
that nature. And so, what does that
yeah,
look like? And what does it look like in terms of like I guess maleness and manhood
bruh,
and being able to express one's connection with one's own interiority, right? Because I think because there's a connection for me between interiority and time travel,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and so I think there's a lot to be explore there. And so all that to say, like I'm curious about language, because I think we have a dearth of a vocabulary,
hmm,
and that is not giving us the capacity to describe who and what we are and how we are and who we're becoming and how
yes,
we are
sir,
becoming those things. So
yeah,
um, yeah, I think those are some of the things because I'm supposed to be, there's some things I've said I was going to do this year
right,
that I'm off. In part, I think part of those are an extension of part of the Sankofa moment, meaning that like giving people the language that I've had to acquire in order to be able to track down this road.
And I think in some ways creating that language in real time. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's part of the work that I'm being called to right now. You connected me with something I was actually thinking about the other day while in the gym, where I do a lot of strength training, which entails a kind of stretching of the capacity of your muscles, whatever muscles you're training. You know what I mean? Using heavy enough weight where you have to strain. But hypertrophy is different. Hypertrophy is like I'm not necessarily trying to stretch the capacity of these muscles. I promise I'm coming back to this. I'm going somewhere. But rather, hypertrophy is like, feels to me like filling in the gaps of the capacity in the muscle that's already been developed. So it's more about volume, you know what I mean? Where you're doing a higher number of reps with a heavy enough weight, but not so heavy that you have to strain to the extent that you do with strength training. And for me, this idea of filling in the gaps, because like you, I feel like I've been on this journey where time traveling, going back, going in the future, like and trying to explore and uncover these connections that we haven't talked about now becomes the work of how do I create a language that can articulate this thing that we've been feeling into, the things that we've intuitively been touching, but that we have not had a language, especially theological language, to really touch, like to really understand, to get a handle on. And so I'm really interested in this idea of, like, right now the work is translating, it's building bridges, it's filling in the gaps to say, y'all, hey, look what I found. Like, let's talk about this, as opposed to, for me, because I'm a mystic at heart, and I know you can connect with this. I could be on a spiritual journey exploring the ends of the earth forever. You know what I mean?
It'd be
But I
good.
think,
Like I
bro,
see, I see
I'm
you the
great.
next life.
I'll see you in the next life. I'm gonna go there and clear space. You know what I mean? But there's something about getting good reps. You know what I mean? And I feel like what you're doing, what you're talking about doing, is really getting good reps from the standpoint of building this volume so that it's easier for people who might be unfamiliar, or for people who have not gone 150,000 years out into the future like you have, uh, to kind of get a handle on and be able to digest some of this stuff. So anyway, but so let's talk a little bit about Black transhuman liberation theology, and specifically, I'm framing this. As you know, I'm gonna use part of this at least for my students because I'm teaching Black and womanist theologies right now, and in your book is one of those texts that's in the overall trajectory that messes with my students real good, and it's something that I appreciate because it stirs them and it raises questions theologically for them that many of them have not considered. And so I
Mm,
just want to highlight a few of my favorite ideas from the book, and
okay.
then I'm going to invite you into that conversation. So the first, and we're coming back to human, but you've already kind of spoken to that human in air quotes, of course.
Yeah.
But of course, vitality. I could talk about what reading your take on vitality did for me, and I'm gonna say a little bit something about that here shortly. But vitality was one of my favorite pieces of this because it gave language to. We're talking about creating language. It gave language to something that I knew to be
Mm,
true, something that I was interacting with actively already. Even when I was
yeah.
an athlete, I was like, damn, I've been doing this. Like, there's a muscle memory already, but I didn't have a language to understand it, and certainly did not have a language that could connect it to the divine in a way that felt true, but I didn't
Can
have that
we
language.
can we take another like just quick pit stop? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Because I agree with you, and I don't know if you've seen like some of the more recent studies on fascia and how that
Yes,
kind of
sir.
functions as like yeah, like the chi, like this chi, like this liquid energy around the muscles, and I find this crazy because I run into like IT bands stuff a lot
Mm-hmm.
because just the kind of I still find myself doing a lot of strength training, like I be
Yep.
exerting,
Yep.
and but then I realized you have not only do you have to move laterally or just on multiple planes, but you also have to deal with like your energy flow and how that in and of itself
Yeah.
releases or constricts not only
Yes.
your body's movement, but just some of the other things that's going on. And I
Yeah.
think being power athletes, right? You come from playing college ball, like you trying to run from people, I'm trying to run through people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a similar mentality, but like it stays with you
Yeah,
so
bro.
many years
Yeah.
afterwards. Like
Yeah.
I can't not get in the weight room and try to like go full tilt all
Yeah.
the time, which
That's
means
right.
on a real way, like I gotta make sure my body's even capable of doing that. So I don't know. I'm just thinking about the fascia piece because I feel like
Nah.
the way you talk about concentrated energies
Yeah.
and attuning attention,
Yes.
I think that in terms of like, 'cause it's one thing to strength train and muscle, but I think the energetic and the spiritual piece that they would like that they try to deny it exists with them. Like, oh, you discovered fashion. No, man, people been talking about this in their bodies for I don't know how long. Like, chill out, bro.
And have been training it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so funny that you bring fascia up because I was just reflecting on this and have been reflecting on this. Fascia. So I conceive of the fascia. We can think about it in the context of our bodies, and I think it's fascinating the fact that we can train our fascia
Hmm.
like with intention. I was at the gym yesterday and I was doing this movement that my boy Amir, who he was with the Colts last year. He just signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's
Okay.
been in the league like 11, 12 years, running back, similar style to how I was, so shifty. You know what I mean? And there's a fluidity that gets lost in this kind of unidirectional strength training where for me my lower back is my issue. I've had back surgery already,
Mm.
but moving through my hips, and this also touches into the erotic, which came up earlier. Maybe we'll get to it, maybe we won't, but there's something about what you're talking about in terms of black romanticism, this
Hmm.
kind of this what feels like a genuine kind of organic connection with, and this kind of outgrowth of an awareness of the erotic. And I have a lot of thoughts on that, but that's something that feels real similar here. But
Who's the product
fascia,
being fluid? Like Archie Lawrence or any somebody else's?
right now I'm referencing kind of my own
Because I was
engagement
just
with it,
thinking,
but from Audre Lorde, and the
okay,
way that Audre Lorde talks about the erotic as this power, but the way that she locates it specifically with women, I would even say the feminine, including the feminine that we carry as male-bodied people.
okay,
And so anyway, there's a lot of that because we could get into future, and I got theories
bro, I'm
about
just,
mumble rap and like yeah.
what you trying to say about this guy?
I
I'm
mean, bro,
sorry, I feel like I derailed this.
no. Come on now. We can go to other galaxies and come right back to conversation.
Yeah,
Um, I think about artists like Future, Yeet. Now, Future might not people might not put him in the category of mumble rap. So you could say trap too, right? Yeet, Destroy Lonely, people who I listen to when I'm going to the gym for a specific purpose. And I think we haven't talked enough about both the ways that men know how to touch the erotic, where Future is making music that is activating at the level of loins. You know what I mean? Like he's making music that's activating you. Now, but the other part of that conversation is there's probably some misogynistic misuse of the erotic as well, right?
listen, man.
But in
The
terms
whole
of energy and activation, I think
yeah.
we know intuitively we all use music to conjure whatever version of ourselves we need for a moment. So if I'm about to play, have a football game or hit the gym, I'm listening to something different than if I'm about to make love or if I'm about to write or whatever the case might be. And so I think that we know how to attune ourselves, and we also know how music attunes us. But anyway, I think that there's a rumbling revolution that is connected to the frequencies of mumble rap or trap music in the ways that they activate us underneath the kind of, people talk about lyrics. It's not about lyrics with this music. It's about energy and activation. So yeah, see now you got me.
Because I'm curious because
Yeah.
like one of the things we don't talk about, like we talk about it as men, like, and and you're used to like the sensual and stuff like that, and then
Yeah.
and so like we and even saying that we know how to type, but there's this always this like this space that is untouchable,
Yeah.
but it exists, and so
Yep.
it's just like what's the relationship to that,
Yeah.
and and how do you navigate the toxicity that can easily arise out of different forms of masculinity that appear to reiterate strength, but double down on
Yep.
what you could argue is not only weakness, but
Yep.
is uh manipulative, or like
Yes,
the
sir.
I guess the male Jezebel version of things, because
That's
it's
right.
attempting to coerce and
That's
or
right.
misconstrue the moment, things along those lines. And so like it's just
And I would characterize that as a misuse of the erotic, where someone intuitively can tap it, but it's being misused because it's a power, and I don't want to get too far afield, but this is a conversation we need to have because of
yeah,
the meaning attached to masculinity. There, one of those untapped spaces that I hear you talking about, and that I think about a lot, is just how we can't even have a conversation about how all of us carry both masculine and feminine energy. Men don't.
100%.
A lot of men don't want to go there, and it's like, dog. But do you understand that when you are in your most creative flow, you're drawing on a feminine force within you? You know what I mean? Like, and that this is always, it exists as a kind of well, the exchange. There's a constant exchange, even down to quantum levels happening within all of us. And this is the reason why, like, I find myself in situations when confronted with different kinds of things, and it's almost like immediately two different possibilities of how I might respond come up.
At
And
least.
and that third way that people talk about, Jesus talks about, or that the kind of the comedic mode that I often draw on, is often like the best response is often an integration of the two. Like it's
Mhm.
the third voice that comes out of that internal conversation
Yeah.
between my inner masculine and my inner feminine, the forces within me, right? My tendency or my urge to create or contain a space and hold space for the other part of me to be creative and be in flow. And so anyway, yeah, go ahead, man. I wasn't intending to say this
Nah.
much, but I appreciate you asking, because these are things I've been thinking about, and it's just like conversations I crave to have with men, where it's like, yo, technically we're all two spirits, so let's talk about it.
But I think even within a similar vein, it's just like the women have been asking us to not, you could argue, hold each other accountable, but they're
Yeah.
asking us like what goes unspoken. Not because the conversation ends up going in the other direction, in the sense of like, men aren't valued and all this other stuff. It's like, all right, fine,
Right.
whatever. But
Right.
at the end of the day, if you was in a room full of women, you was the only dude, you would be, they would ask you to take on some leadership role, or they would look
Right.
to you. And
Right.
so, regardless of how you feel like
Right.
you've been treated, you still sit in a particular space. And so, what are you
That's
going to do
right.
with that?
Yeah,
And
that's right.
how do you honor the spaces of the folks around you who regardless of how much they argue against your body because of what people who have embodied what you embody have done,
Yep.
how much can you not so much try to disprove what
Right.
somebody else's actions
Right.
are, but how
Right.
much can you continue to honor what they continue to kneel and lay at your feet as a just because you have a male body.
That's right. I think honoring is the right word for me, because when I think about this, I think it's the challenge is, and also I think the invitation is, how can we learn how to honor the feminine in everybody that we encounter and in ourselves? And I think if men can learn to learn what it feels like, and I'm saying feeling intentionally, because we've been duped to think that there's this kind of priority put on being rational, devoid, like separated from our bodies, separated from our emotions. It's like, yo, do you know that's where your fucking power comes from? You know what I mean? And so, what does it
But
feel like to honor the feminine in yourself? And then what does it feel like to honor the feminine in everybody that you encounter?
And then who's when are we just gonna be honest that rationality is an emotional, like even when you say you're neutral, that's an emotional state. Like when because
Absolutely.
what people are, I don't know if I say this explicitly in that first text, but like every emotional state, every physiological state is an emotional state. So it
Absolutely.
don't matter what's flowing through your veins, if it is connected to a particular emotion or not, or the lack thereof, that in and of itself is an emotional state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and yeah. Every thought has a feeling tone to it for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's Antonio Damasio who wrote a book, "Feeling and Knowing," is something that I'm holding in tension with Yvonne Chareau's Black Magic and doing some stuff on nervous systems,
Hmm.
and the nervous system as the root in the context of root work. But one of the things that he makes clear in terms of neurobiology and our evolutionary unfolding as a species is that nervous systems are the reason that we have minds and consciousness in the first place. And so feeling, our capacity to feel in connection with our organism, precedes our capacity to think in terms of rational whatever we want to call it. And so as a result, then every rational thought or idea or inclination that I have has a feeling tone connected to it. So you cannot separate feelings, and you can't.
But
We're
that's
grounded in feel. We feel first, which is
but that's
why I think that I wrote a piece called "Your Inner Child is Film," because I think we developed the capacity to feel through life before we developed the language and the kind of prefrontal ways of capturing those feelings.
mm,
We way off, so we can come back because I know exactly where we took
yeah,
off.
that's a good thing about having grounding. These are grounding questions.
Yeah,
Nah, but I think there's so much there because when you say that the feelings where your powers are, bro, like how you everybody want to fall in love with Marvel or all these superhero joints. What you think electricity is? What you think the
yeah,
fire things are? What you think being able
yeah,
to fly is? Like these are, and
yeah.
they were like, we have to train our superpowers. What do you think they're training?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And, and so it's like, yeah, that's like you have these energy spurts that run wild,
Yeah,
and you refuse to connect them with your ability with the part of you that communicates. And so this Cartesian kind of split is also this particular like physiological lobotomy that removes or disconnects one from the power centers that give them the
that's right.
potential to actually become the divine figure that they were at birth.
Absolutely.
I'm
Which
done.
to me, if you have an empire that you're trying to create and maintain, it makes sense why you would cut people off from their own power. Makes sense. You know what I
Easy.
mean? And this is why I talk about root work because that's what has to happen. Stuff needs
I
to be
love
rooted out, but we also need to reconnect with our own root to understand. Like, hey, when I'm saying that we're divine organisms, I mean that shit literally.
uh,
Like energy and electricity and all of that. So yeah,
listen. I'm grateful. I'm just great. I'm grateful for the pairing of the words that you use with the stuff I've been thinking. 'Cause yeah, man. I remember coming back from Texas and doing some work after watching you work, and I was like, there are times when there's this inside of me, there's this track, and I can feel I'm always going. I can sometimes I'm almost like this on the track. But what I watched you do was be able to do this on the track and have two sides touching. And I see how
mm,
fast and focused that is. And I
mm,
know I can touch that sometimes,
mm-hmm,
but it's the ability to be like, nah, just to get it back down again. Because the zoom off, like it's such a much cleaner energy. And I think
yeah,
what I've had to grapple with in some ways in the last few months is finding a different energy source
yeah,
that's cleaner from for me because I think that's
yeah.
more helpful for my body
I
and it's
appreciate that.
sustainable too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate that imagery and that yeah, that feels good. That feels right. The other thing I would mention before kind of moving because I want to read a quote from your book
Okay, bet.
and then and move because and I know we got
My bad.
I knew no, man, please, this is doing exactly what it needs to do. But I forgot to mention in terms of the fascia, we think about the fascia within our bodies. I think there's also a way of thinking about the fascia between all living beings. And one of the ways I conceive of that, this is how I think about energetic intimacy, which is a concept I used in playing the game.
Yep.
And then it really will be kind of one of the foundational moves in root work reconsidered, where like a starting point of understanding is that like we exist on this plane together, bound together by our energetic exchanges. In much the same way that the fascia in our body allows, the inner working to communicate and how we communicate with it. And so fascia is something that is really fascinating, both from a physiological standpoint, but also thinking about it as a kind of spiritual, um, as this almost kind of electric web that keeps us bound together. And so when I
Yeah.
think of energetic intimacy, which we're going to talk about energy here in a little bit,
Okay.
that's where my mind goes.
All right, my bad. I'm not tuning out. I'm trying to be mindful of my energy source. Speaking of energy,
Yeah.
I looked up
Yeah.
and my battery is finna die. Let me
Yeah,
just
go
mute
ahead and grab
for a
your.
second.
This is a good pause point, and then I'll cue up this quote that I want to read.
All right, what you got?
All right, so so one of the other ideas from Black transhuman liberation theology that I really appreciate is the black body as technology. And so this is a quote from page 43. You say, and this is kind of toward the middle of the page, you say, but what is biological blackness? Biological blackness is the black body. And what is the body if not a set of complex systems such as the central nervous system, cardiovascular system, respiratory system, digestive system, endocrine system, etc., which collectively converge upon the intricacies which undergird and promote black life? Now, one could insert any race or ethnicity into the last sentence, which points to the fact that all bodies function as sets of complex systems. And in connection with the definition of technology for Black transhuman liberation theology, a biological understanding of the body as an open set of complex systems would situate the body as a technology. And I remember reading, and there's more there obviously, but I remember reading your engagement with the body as technology, and that was another one of those moments of resonance where it was like, see, I knew there was a way to think about like technologies out there, yeah, but think of ourselves as divine technologies, that we also have a kind of invitation, open invitation, and a capacity to work with, to develop in certain ways. But beyond that, man, I think the thing that your book did for me, because we could talk all day about concepts, your book gave me a kind of permission that I didn't know I was asking. Growing up in the church, black church in the South, so you can imagine some of the different doctrines and things I had to exorcise, and that was, my MDiv and my PhD program was largely an invitation to do that, but also to reclaim elements of this spirituality that in the Black South we embodied on an everyday basis, despite the things that they said about this is demonic or this is, all that type of stuff. It's like, yeah, we were doing hoodoo and didn't even know it. You know what I mean? But the language or the permission that your book gave me to begin to construct a language that better fit my reality and what I experienced, that meant like your book was one of those books that cut me loose in a direction that I was feeling into, but didn't have the kind of internal permission to say, fuck it, I'm about to see what this is about and call it what it feels like in terms of its connection with God, right? So my question for you, where did you find permission to write Black transhuman liberation theology and to write it the way that you did? Like, where do you find the permission to be as audacious as you are in terms of what you're doing as a scholar? Yeah. And it might be not just one instance, it might be over time. I'm just curious where you found that permission. Because a lot of people
Yeah.
and my students, this keeps coming up in my class about permission and kind of the permission that womanist thinkers gave me as a theologian as well, namely Monica
Mm.
Coleman, Kelly Brown Douglas, So I'm curious to hear that from you.
So growing up, my father used to always say, "Don't be afraid to go against the grain."
Hmm.
And mind you, both my parents are from New York, so my pops from Harlem, and my mom's from the Bronx. Um, Dad would tell me stories about when he lived in South Carolina, getting chased by white boys and then turn around beating them up, stuff like that. Like I've always grown up not giving a fuck. Like that's kind of like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
like that's and I'm not gonna lie. Like that doesn't make me a tough guy. That doesn't make me like I'm always doing the right thing or that kind of like I'm not. It's not that vibe. It's just but like I've always been good with being standing on my own
yeah,
and being willing to sit with the consequences
yeah,
for the what I'm saying for the most part. And so it's
yeah,
like and then with terms of theology, man, like I'll be honest. If I had to, I say this frequently. If I had to study in them and continue to write about them, I wouldn't be here.
yeah.
And
Yes, sir.
so,
Me either.
right? And so, like going to Claremont School of Theology and having the support of someone like a Monica Coleman, Dr. Coleman, she will always push my ideas further. And then having like a Andy Dreiser and the folks that were there, like do whatever you want. This sounds interesting. Explore your,
Yeah,
just whatever you're curious about. Like just
yeah,
being in that kind of space. I think it gave me space.
yeah,
And you gotta say it was permission, but I feel like I was gonna do what I wanted to anyway. So I just
yeah,
say space, like
yeah,
to fully explore what I wanted and not have the constraints of like, oh, you have to do it this way. You have to get like part of the reason why I chose Andy before I even knew Dr. Como was there was like um Andy in 2008 had a neuro spirituality conference.
mm,
And so I was like, the fuck is that? And so,
hmm,
and then, but I was telling Pacini, who was, I guess one of my mentors at Emory at the time, he was like, I feel like this real deep connection between, playing ball and prayer. And he was like,
bruh.
and so this is what I wanted to study. And he was like, well, you should go out west because on the East Coast, they don't realize that you have bodies yet. And so, people chuckle when they say that now, right? But then you
Yeah,
think about it, the Neurospirituality Conference, and it worked out perfectly because when I was at Claremont, I got a chance to go across the street at Pomona College, Scripps, McKenna, and take actual neuroscience classes. Like
damn,
I'm legit,
man.
like I'm
Yeah,
legit over there. Like you know what I'm saying? I did some time at a neurophysiology lab. Like your boys, I'm nice. And
yeah,
so, and to say all that, because I say it was a perfect time because people who came after me that tried to follow the same track that I went into because of that relationship with CST and the Claremont Consortium deteriorated, they weren't even allowed to go across the street no more.
yeah,
And so, like, I was there right then when I needed to be. And so, all that to say, like, I was going to do what I wanted. This happened to be within the lane of what I wanted to do.
yeah. Man, and I can't pass over the fact that like neurophysiology or neurophysiologically and spiritually, there's something about there's a neurophysiology of not giving a fuck that that lets you move freely. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the conversations that I hear among peers right now, and even this kind of unfolding process of that also is in connection with the erotic and in connection with reclaiming pleasure. There's also a kind of root work that's moving in the direction of learning how not to give a fuck, according to the things that we've been told that you're supposed to give a fuck about. Go
I
ahead.
want to add one more thing. Going back to sports, playing middle and outside linebacker to run through somebody like I felt like I was the opposite of Marshawn. It's like I'd run through niggas like over and over and over and over and over and
Yeah,
over and over
yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah,
Like, bro, that was a choice every time. And you just watch people's faces. They were like, I gotta run through, I gotta go see this dude again.
bro. And
And
that's
it builds that up in you. That's the
yeah,
word.
absolutely.
That's the practice of not giving
That's
run through
right.
your
And well,
soul.
and here's the thing. With any of these practices, ritual practices, you can develop muscle memory. So then it gets easier. The more that you practice moving in this particular way, it gets easier to move that way. For me, it was always being elusive because I got to deal with motherfuckers like you, and this is like, nah, I'm not finna go head up with him because my body, like over time, no. Now, if it's a one off, I can remember some times where I was a smaller running back, and so elusive, and kind of Barry Sanders was my idol. But there were times when it was like, don't get it twisted. I catch you on this sideline. I'm gonna put my head down. But if I do that 100 times in a row, my body ain't gonna last. You know what I mean? So what you're talking about, and like our different styles are both intelligences, are both technologies, and this I'm not even gonna start talking about beast, but lumping it all into beast is like taking the divine multiplicity that our ancestors knew when they had these polytheistic notions of God based on a deeper attuned relationship with the dimensions of God and conflating it into a monotheistic white male God. That's kind of the same. That's kind of the same intellectual violence that I see happen when black athletes are put in the category of beast, because there's actually a multiplicity of intelligences that we're watching when we're watching these people survive in this social space that they have to survive in. You know what I mean?
Bro. Multiplicity of intelligence is exactly where I am right now, and I'm so grateful for that in terms of this what you just described as intellectual violence. But for even furthermore, like I'm low key this training attention or attuned attention that you've been
Yeah, bro.
talking about.
Yeah.
I'm sitting with that heavy. Like I'm because in order to navigate multiple intelligences, bro, you know how attuned your attention has to be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Like that's crazy. And I'll be and even like we talk football all day. Like if you was on the sideline, you probably outrun my ass the whole time, just straight
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But like in that goddamn box, that was my shit.
That's right. That's right.
But even to be able to like, cause I remember even in high school, coach would be like, "Hey, you gotta be a beast on the field, and then you gotta be a gentleman off." And so you have to be, and that already speaks to two intelligences.
That's exactly right.
But you add, everybody's hats nowadays. You got father, all this other stuff, bro. And those are different people. Like
Yeah.
let's be honest, they're not the same. I don't know who finna watch this, but they not the same nigga. Like
No.
they
No.
not.
No.
And so like
No.
just to be very clear, it's just it's but to be able to intentionally and
Yeah.
attentively and on purpose, right? And I say that like intentionally and on purpose, you could say they're the same, but it's like, but you got to be able because it's one thing to flip the switch. It's something else to ease off and on and into and have a
Yeah.
smooth transition.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that
Yeah.
with those multiple intelligences of who you are and the divine
Yeah.
qualities, like that's another level of attunement. And that
Yeah.
and like you, that's an attention thing, bro. I love that concept. I ain't gonna hold you. Like I'm trying to work that out in my own personal, to be honest with you, like to see what that looks like.
It's funny because that's where I had for us to go next is like let's talk about attention. And the reason why I even started down this path is because so I came to Black transhuman liberation theology and essentially the conversation with you years ago with this appetite for talk. So I had written just kind of full transparency. I'll catch visions, right? I'll catch visions of interactions. I'll catch visions of concepts. I text myself. I have the creative process. Years ago, years before we met, I started this document because some stuff was coming through, and it was like in terms of energy. I'm trying to look at and understand life. I'm talking about every dimension of life in terms of energy. There's a way of talking about it in terms of the energetic exchange. So when I come to your book and you start talking about vitality in this way, for me, it sent me to attention because it's like, hold up. So if we are light bearers, if we have energy that is gifted and that we can develop and direct, or send strategically with it certain, you know what I mean? Like for me, that begs a question about the nature of attention. It also to me speaks to the kind of ancestral magic of attention. So then when I'm thinking about ancestors, different ways of conceiving people doing root work, I'm like, yo, it's really like how are these people attending to things in this way where they're actually applying their energy to it with purpose. I think about Cyclops since you talked about Marvel earlier. Is Cyclops in the Marvel universe, or I get him?
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah. So
excellent.
so Cyclops, right? And I was talking with a friend the other day about, and really have been talking for weeks about something that not just that you're looking at, but what you're attending to is catching the energy like that you just emit in real time, devoid of how conscious of energy that you're putting into it. So when you think about studies that talk about when if you attend lovingly to plants versus on some violence type stuff, you see it over time. And the same thing happens in our interactions with people and or your creative projects. You know what I mean? And so anyway, I'm just curious to hear from you. And well, let me say one more thing. Attention, because I'm coming into awareness of my own neurodivergence more and more, and I don't even like neurodivergence because diverting from what? There is no norm. So I think neurobrilliance is something that I would say, but specifically understanding autism as a spiritual sensitivity that makes it actually in some ways very my natural way of attuning to life is different, right? So attention, if I told somebody pay attention, that's like, and I just wrote an essay on this where I'm basically trying to get to the root of or the essence of what black athleticism is. And come through that to talk about how black women are the quintessential athletes, not just from the primordial ways in which we all come from black women. You can think about mitochondrial DNA, which I didn't have space to put in the essay, so I'm like, damn, it's anyway. But when you think also about the agility of attention black women have had to pay in the United States history alone, this depth of attunement, I'm like, yo, black women are the quintessential athletes who can help us understand what it means to attune to life with a kind of dexterity that somebody that exists in the center of whiteness and maleness all their life simply has not had to develop. So all of that, Dr. Butler, how do you conceive of attention, or what comes to mind when you're thinking about the nature of attention?
That's a hard one, and I'm saying this because, like, I think we want to, and maybe I wish you'd asked me the damn question last week before we lost this goddamn division playoffs for the kids, because because I'm coaching them, man, and it was a long season, and they built in like 3 bye weeks in a row, and I'm talking about this because I had to try to keep these kids' attention up the whole
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And I get it, it's they some of them in fifth grade, some of them graduating, all this other stuff, but and they played a hell of a game. Don't get it twisted. It came down to the very last play.
yeah.
This goes down to my expectation of blowing everybody out, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I think the reality is, I think attention is similar to when you talk about that. And that's not so now we can tie in your concept of intimacy energetically. Now, 'cause it takes me
Yeah,
back to my contemplative studies when it would talk about how you would pick a like for instance like you got practice where you pick a word and you know, even or just a basic kind of mind clearing practice. You pick a word or you try to be as soon as something else enters the frame, the first thing you're supposed to do is what? Is notice and then go
yeah,
back to what you were focusing on. So it's like, oh, it's not
yeah.
like I'm trying to keep everything out. Like, no, don't pay attention to this. It's like, oh, something else is trying to come to the surface, but it's just not that time right now. So I come back to it.
That's
And
right.
so attention, and you can think about this in terms of relationships, right? You with your significant other, like something happens, whether it be like, oh, a phone call takes place, or somebody, whatever these things may be. The attention, or even it may be a full-on rupture, like y'all beefing. How do you come back to that person? And
Yeah,
so it's like, and come back to right under not just the guys, but under like the terms of like what you said you were going to be to each other.
that's right.
And so
That's
it's
right.
like,
That's right.
and so damn, I'm so grateful for this conversation in a lot of ways. But so attention
Yeah.
is this commitment to returning
Oh,
to
I
it.
love that.
Yeah.
Attention as a commitment to returning, bro. I love that. And I would say in the name of like the reclamation of the erotic, attention is also You said, you said, what did you say? Attention as what of returning?
The
I had a
commitment to
specific
return,
phrase.
because like
The
it's like, because you
commitment
think
to
about,
return.
yeah, because it's like, all right, cool. It's I think about this in all my like long-term relationships. Are you mad now? So what? What you gonna do?
Right.
You leaving?
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
not just, I'm talking about like even my
Yeah.
oldest friends. All right, cool. You mad? All right, you done? Or like need more?
Yeah.
You all right? Whatever. I see you in a few. Like, all right,
Yeah.
and so it's always like I learned some of my oldest friendships. Like these are the people I'm not nice to on purpose. Like we,
Yeah.
we these people, it's just, you fight with on like just a regular basis, but the reality was
Right.
like it's always a commitment to come back. Like
Yeah.
that's the found there's a foundation there, and I think the way that we've been talking about energetic attunement, this, and so it's like no matter what is coming up, like this seems like an obstacle, but it's an obstacle because you changed your attention to that. And so it's like, no, this may seem like it's right in front of me, but I'm really focused on this the whole time. And so it's like,
Yeah.
how do you, no matter where your gaze may be diverted to, it's like, how do you get back to that thing? And it's not because you are forcing everything else out so much as there's an acknowledgement that there is a multiplicity of things in the visual field.
That's
But
right.
I said I was going to look at this.
That's right.
And so my ability to maintain it may grow as I focus on it, and I may feel bad about diverting my gaze, but if I'm actually attending to it, then I've come back. And so it's the ability to come back and then lengthen the time through which you can stay
That's right.
on it.
That's right.
And I
And
but I think
that's
there's
part of that
a
spiritual muscle training that I like
I'll
talking
say this
about.
last piece. No, no, no. This last piece would be, but it's not just a diversion of gaze, but it's also I can look at it and then it stays back here, and so it's
Yeah.
a perceptual and it's a cognitive loop, because not only do I see it and I'm not committing to looking at it, but even if my gaze is gone, I'm still thinking about it,
Yeah.
which
It's a
reminds me that
relationship.
I'm coming. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's a relationship and or an energetic exchange. You, where you sent me was if attention is a commitment to return, attunement is a commitment to feel. And they're not different. But one of the things I was reflecting on in this essay that I just wrote, and one of the ways I critiqued myself in that essay, because in playing the game, basically, after talking, deconstructing this idea of beast and talking through the intelligence piece, then it was like, okay, now we're talking about energy, right? We're talking about athletes basically as energy workers who have learned how to pay full-bodied attention to develop this kind of ever-present state of readiness. You know what I mean? Like you've trained, for example, to play linebacker. So not just in the context of a game, and aside from warming up and blah blah blah, but let's say you run into somebody on the street that in an interaction that requires you to be linebacker. If you're trained as an athlete, or like when you're trained, there are certain things, even now there are certain ways of engaging that situation that are embedded in you to where you won't even have to, it's second nature, you know what I mean? So like you exist as a result of this kind of ritual of prayer, practice, and play, which I talk about in the book, with this readiness to move in all the directions that are necessary in relation to whatever the quote unquote sport or interaction is. So really what's happened is you have attuned so deeply to something. Read, you have developed such a deep feel for something that you can move in relation to it at will, applying whatever kind of energy to it in real time. You talk about it in the context of relationships, attending or attention. Like I'm committed to giving loving energy to this relationship, right? I see your wheels going, so let me pause. Oh wait, I can't hear you.
my bad. What you describing reminds me of like training until the second nature. And
That's
so
it.
second nature, because it's, but then now you gotta, now we have to sit with second nature, because second nature is no, at least the way it was described and the way that I've experienced it. Uh, you would, you do it until you don't have to think about it anymore, but you're
Yep.
not even talking about thinking, you're talking about feeling. And
I'm
so,
talking about feeling.
but I think the way that we talk about feeling is a spatial temporal type of feeling, because the
Yes.
way that you feel into those assignments, right, from an athlete standpoint, is not necessarily like uh first level emotional feels. It's so much.
Right.
It's a spatial, proprioceptive type of feel.
Yes. Yes,
I
sir.
I orient my body this way. I hold myself this way. I
That's
engage with this my surroundings this way. You know what I'm saying?
that's right.
It's
That's right.
the it's a spatial relationship that
Absolutely.
then triggers an internal relationship.
That's right. And that's where attunement feels more full bodied because you let's say you turn your attention to something in this kind of proprioceptive way where your internal viscera is also attaching to it, right? So that feelings come up really as a result of you making contact, like feeling into whatever this thing is. But when we think about attention, oftentimes attention has this connotation like Cyclops. You know, it's like where you're directing your mind. That's part of it. But we also have bodies that what we're actually doing is it's far there's many more tentacles I think than attention can capture when we talk about attunement because really you're talking about the whole surface of my body is feeling into something or the whole surface area of my being is making contact with something and I'm downloading it at all of those levels. So in real time I'm understanding what does it mean in my gut when I engage this way, my heart, my all of that, where what comes out on the other end in the context of sports, it's like, damn, you see that run Marshawn Lynch made?
Mhm.
He has completely
Because
felt through this to the point where he can breathe easily in this circumstance because he has trained in that way for so long. Where I think that just being able to breathe deeply into something is the starting point of developing a feel. All right. So for those who are watching, you'll notice a location change for Dr. Butler. We had to pause and resume because service was not clearly wanting us to talk about attention. So we were on the heels of that conversation about attention, and I think I had just said something about. Well, actually, I don't even probably need to do all of this because I'm gonna just splice it together with. But so I want to come back to your question. Dr. Butler asked a question that the last recording didn't capture because it was going in and out. So let's just pick back up on the question that you raised in the context of that conversation on attention.
yes, sir. So the question I had, Dr. Grant, was pecans, man. No.
Well, while you
Not a,
choking on that, let me just observe the art in your backdrop, which is dope as hell.
no, I
So
appreciate
yeah,
it.
yeah.
The question was, how do you train that level of attention without having to do so in an environment that reiterates a constant mode of danger, right? You think about playing those types of sports as an example. Even if you did it in the play of like Deion Sanders chasing rabbits,
Mm-hmm.
there's always the risk of losing one's place.
Mm-hmm.
And so, regardless
What
of the
losing? What do you mean losing one's place? Let me pull on that.
no, great question. Think about it like this: if you growing up in Florida and you want to play, you don't want to be one of the bigs. You can't catch a rabbit. You're gonna be one of the bigs.
Right.
If you are training these skills, the unspoken is always if you don't get this right, somebody's coming for your position.
Mm-hmm.
And so you train to have second nature attention,
Right.
hoping that you have a baseline foundation of a skill set or an ability that would carry you, to greatness, whatever that looks like. But how do you do that in a way that doesn't reinforce some level of external threat?
I don't know that we do because of the fact that whatever I'm moving and I remember we were talking also about kind of breathing deeply into something, right? As a
Hmm.
way to kind of you really be just allowing yourself to be impacted by deeply by whatever the circumstance is, right? So if there's danger or whatever it is, and the reason why I'm saying I don't know that we do, I don't know that we can attune deeply to one thing and bracket off the other dimensions of the thing that might be more harmful, for example. And because I think this speaks to our capacity as a species to adapt and adjust to anything, whether it's life giving or whether it's deleterious of who we are. You know what I mean? Like you can develop muscle memory around some bullshit too. And I think that that's both the tragic and the comedic dimension of just the nature of our existence is whatever I'm breathing into, whatever I'm kind of feeling into, you can develop a feel for it.
Mm.
You know what I mean? For good or for ill. And I don't know if that quite answers your question. But yeah, I'd be curious what else comes up if, if we keep with that train of thought or if it answered your question.
No, I think it addresses it. I don't know if it answers it. I think it helps lead further down the road. I'm not saying this. I say this mainly because what you've done in an important way is name what is inescapable,
Mm-hmm.
right? The consequential nature of reality,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you call it the tragic and comedic because you're laughing at people losing their spot.
The tragic dimensions of like this the like 10 of us in a room can all be trying to do good, quote unquote, but by nature of the whatever the circumstances might be, like somebody's going, somebody's going to experience some kind of suffering. So it's like the inevitability of suffering in the world, and the fact that like as beings, as entities that are evolving into this kind of open-ended field of possibility, we've been given like, and this is part of what I would argue is like the part of what makes us divine is to the ability to form in relation to whatever the thing is, right? Or to attune to whatever the thing is. And of course, there's ways to pull that apart and to talk about like what this stimulus does to my nervous system versus this one, right? And how do we measure good versus bad and evil and all of those types of questions. But I think when I think about your question in terms of like how do the fact that I can breathe into literally anything and adjust to it as a result based on my ability to attune, based on the nature of our nervous systems, speaks to, both I think possibility and the problematic parts of being in relation.
No, I don't disagree. And I think part of what maybe I'm hinting at or hoping to construct is more so what it means to manufacture something despite of.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I got you. Yeah, which I think speaks to the kind of embodied brilliance and intelligence that we were talking about earlier, where when I think about who are the quintessential athletes and I'm thinking about black women, I'm thinking about that specifically in the context of what you're raising, where you've got you've got these imperial forces that are designed to delete you. You know what I mean? At multiple axes that make you, right? Black woman, don't let you be a black queer woman. Don't let you also represent a kind of middle or working class kind of experience, you know what I mean? Like this. So then now as a result, the ways you have to attend to life just to survive, the kind of attentional dexterity or agility that you have to develop. And I say develop specifically because that's what's happening is like you're breathing into all of these different ways of existing and being. You're also, so on one hand it's like, damn, why I got to deal with all this shit. On another hand, when I look at your attunement or when I look at the kind of attention you've given, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, this person to me represents somebody whose consciousness is more fully rounded out as a result of having to both creatively deploy their intelligence in the world, not just for survival, but also like literally out here creating stuff, creating reality. Because we could talk about all the things that black women or black men or black people in general have created and conjured into existence on some quantum shit, right? But at the same time, doing that while also negotiating this field of defenders, if you will, and having to do that on a regular, it's like some people are walking around here with attention is on swole, and other people, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I
Yeah.
appreciate, yeah, that you clarifying that part.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful. I think this is a concept of a well-rounded attention. I think that's something that is not given enough credit to because of the you can call, I think other spaces they'll call it like mental dexterity, but I think attentional dexterity requires attentional dexterity and multiple intelligences combined suggests a bit more is happening underneath the hood,
Absolutely.
and it gives credit to those kind of complex inner workings, right? And that's why why I keep coming back to time travel because when you talk about complex inner workings, one of the most complex inner workings that we know, right, are like handmade clocks of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you could talk about how, sophisticated like a mainframe is or like a motherboard is, and even then it has this, this motherboard, but still like when you talk about something that has to work in sync in a certain way, and you look at like the beautiful, architecture or craftsmanship that goes into a clock, right? It speaks to right these kind of time signatures. And I think when we talk about time travel, we talk about um multiple intelligences and
Yep.
attentional dexterity. We're also talking about what it means to have multiple clocks either in sync or going off together at the same
Yeah.
time, and what it means to be able to, travel between them all and be
Absolutely.
present, right, in the various
Absolutely.
orientations required that
Yeah.
of each space. So yeah,
Absolutely. And I think that to me that speaks to the depth of attunement. Like attunement being this way in which I can pay a whole bunch of different kinds of attention at the same time, like with my whole body. You know what I mean? It's like attending with my whole body versus pointing the mind. And of course, the ability to point the mind comes out of that capacity. But when I'm thinking about, since we were talking about black women, I'm thinking about like there's a depth and a breadth of full bodied attention given to life in a way that if we're talking about humanizing or like in this language of what it means to be human, I'm looking at, okay, who among us, both by nature of genetic heritage in terms of like things I'll talk about imago DNA, which we won't open that up today, but that's another conversation. But that coupled with the dexterity that one has had to develop by nature of functioning at all, kind of on all cylinders all the time, so to
yeah.
speak. You know.
You keep saying attending, and we've been talking about fascia and attention, and we think about how like the attention is one is it functions as a particular type of stream. But so one of my, I guess the most recent definition of spirituality that I have is like the weaving together of all of one's facets of life into a coherent web.
Yeah.
And so to play off of using that your language, right, is attending, attention, attending, and then it makes fashion makes you think of a tendon. And so
Yeah.
what does it mean for our tendons, or our attention to function as an attendant, and like using each kind of aspect of your reality to like
That's
point
right.
towards one thing, and not just point but to be woven together or structurally sound in a way that to even remove yourself from the focus of that thing, um, will be so much difficult because you've wrapped yourself in the things that would make that particular thing, you could say inevitable or whatever, but
Yeah.
you've put yourself in a path,
Yeah.
because the strands of your reality point in that direction.
There's a magic about that I like. I want to see people talking about again, because when you think about what you just described and even the etymology of the words attention or tension, like there's a connection between these that have to do with like you're literally stretching yourself towards something.
Hmm.
What are we stretching other than our energy towards something every time that we're attending to it? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So like so the emission of energy, the kind of spirituality or spirits that we emit, that we embody, or spritz, as I'm going to talk about a little bit in the next book, so that it helps people understand like much of what we talk about in the context of spirituality and even the mental pictures, right? This kind of, what scientists will talk about, the mind doesn't exist in the brain, but it's kind of like this cloud that we carry with us and that we interact with and that we interface with. I'm like, where do you think that emission is coming from? It's coming from our embodiment. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And this is the reason why when you find yourself embodying new things, there are new possibilities that pop up in your imagination in connection with that, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's something really magical about the mere fact not only that we exist and we have energy and that the circulatory system and all these systems that you talk about in this book kind of they work together to continue this stream of conscious energy that flows through us, but also that we've been given both the calling, the capacity, and the responsibility to develop that, and the freedom to apply that however we are or can in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No.
yeah, but
No. Oh, good.
go ahead.
Please. No. I'm just. No. I'm just. It makes me think about um people who have had the ability to take care of their bodies into like older age, uh, and the
Hmm.
ways that uh, folks, who are in Silicon Valley are trying to like create like chemical
Hmm.
possibilities, but
Hmm.
it feels like people are not taking seriously the mental slash spiritual slash psychological aspects.
Yeah.
Which is, because we talk about transhumanism, we're talking about the intellectual,
Yeah.
the psychological, and the physical,
Yeah.
right? In terms of
Yeah.
how it augment people's bodies, right, from just a purely technological space.
Yeah.
But you could depend on what strain of thought you're hanging out with, right? You would need a fourth dimension, which is spirituality.
Hmm.
But it seems like people are trying to extend their life without extending or augmenting their spiritual
Mm.
selves. And
Hmm.
so, but you one could argue that there's something spiritual or that these people may have been able to connect with that has
Yep.
allowed their bodies to
Yep.
remain elastic, to say the least,
Absolutely.
into
Absolutely.
those longer or older ages, right? Chronologically versus just
Yeah.
how their bodies been upkept.
And I think that that's the part that's the part where it feels like, in one hand we could talk about this as a spritz that we give off, but there's also something that we're drinking, something that
Mm,
we're tapped into, something that inspires us. We know that the connection between inspiration and breath, like something you're breathing in a particular kind of spiritual way, that's also contributing to the way that you're embodying life. So there's, this kind of exchange. There it is again. But let me get us out of here in the spirit of honoring the erotic and feeling and the kind of these themes that we've been talking about. We're gonna do this little game called gut responses is what I'll call it. I'm gonna call out a word, and I want you to say the first thing that comes up in relation to the word. So not even
okay.
allowing it to get to the kind of rational where we can overthink it, but
Hmm.
just like what's the impulse that comes up as you think about this word. All right. So I just
Sure.
got a few. The first one is AI.
That's body.
Body.
Yeah.
Okay. Revolution.
Airy.
Hmm.
Like airy. Just extending the word revolutionary.
Ah. Okay. God.
Body.
In air quotes. Human.
Some made up shit. Because even if you want to go like the old historic route where it's like to become human is to become a divine figure, you still had to make this idea up. It's all a technology of imagination.
Technology of imagination, and I put human last because I at least want, whoever listens to this, I want my spirits or my students to hear you talk about human, because that's going to be a big conversation point in our class when we meet. So I appreciate that. Yeah, a technology of imagination. I say.
Yeah, man. This is thanks for this is fun, man. We
Yeah, man. I appreciate you for showing up and giving of your energy and your time to this to contribute to this.
nah for sure, man. And these conversations around manliness and masculinity, I think they need to continue. Is not enough of, at least I don't think quality. There you
Yeah, I'm with
That's
you. Shoot, maybe we can run it back one of these days, and that be our play space that we work in.
for sure.
All right, my boy. Peace.
Yes, sir.